everyone. I am Dr. Sushil Vijay, your orthopedic faculty at DBMCI, and we are here today to discuss about the recall questions of FMG that we had this time. So the students, they have given some input, and based on that we have created these questions. Okay, let's see them one by one. So number one was the most commonest site associated with infection, tuberculosis infection in the hip joint. So do remember that most commonest site, there are certain important points about tuberculosis, in our musculoskeletal system that we should know. So point number one is, what is the most commonest site affected by tuberculosis when they call skeletal site? So most commonest site always remember, the most commonest site is always lungs. But when they say the most commonest skeletal site or the most common site in bones, so most common skeletal site will remain vertebra. Do remember this. And this vertebral involvement is what you call Pott's spine. That's what you call a Pott's spine, correct? And now there are certain important MCQs related to Pott's spine as well. Okay, so you must remember, these are one-liner things, but you must remember them. Coming on to this question, that the most commonest site or the of infection of tuberculosis in the hip joint. So do remember, there are 4 sites marked over here, right? There are 4 sites marked over here. The site number 1, it is the acetabulum. The site number 1 is acetabulum. Site number 2 is the head of femur. Site number 2 is head of femur. Site number 3, here, it is a neck of femur. And site number 4 is greater trochanter. Now, out of these mentioned site, the most commonest site affected in tuberculosis of the hip joint, it is acetabulum. This is the most commonest site. And least commonest affected, it is greater trochanter, right? Now you can easily understand that if the site number 1 and 2, which are the commonest site now, acetabulum and the head of the femur. So if this is the site which is getting involved in tuberculosis, what will be the most commonest complication associated in regard to the joint? What will happen? This joint has a tendency to get destroyed because it's a weight bearing joint, right? So what else you have to remember in tuberculosis of the hip joint? Do remember are the stages of tuberculosis. The stages of tuberculosis of the hip joint, right? That stages of tuberculosis of the hip joint. So what are the important things that you must remember here? The first stage is the stage of synovitis. First stage is the stage of synovitis, and the attitude here is flexion, abduction and external rotation. And we know that here with abduction, what do we get? Here we see in the patient apparent lengthening. So this is one stage in which we see apparent lengthening, and the radiological bony changes are not much seen on x-rays. Then can be marginal erosions or something like that, but not gross changes. So in stage 1 we don't find much of the change in the x-ray. Stage number 2 is what we call early arthritis. Stage number 2 is what we call early arthritis, okay? And early arthritis, the attitude changes to adduction and internal rotation because now the bony changes have started destroying the joint. Here in the early arthritis, what is the difference with early and late arthritis? Here we get apparent shortening, right? Here we get apparent shortening. That means the limb of the patient will appear to be short. So that is apparent shortening. And with apparent shortening here, the bony changes seen is periarticular osteopenia. That means, what is a periarticular osteopenia? That is blackening in the x-ray. When you take an x-ray, these areas will appear more black as compared to the rest of the bone. Okay, so first stage synovitis, here you see fiber and then apparent lengthening. It's not true lengthening. Number 3 is late arthritis. Now what will happen in late arthritis? Attitude remains same, but the point is here the joint is destroyed. So there will be decrease in the joint space, right? There will be decrease in joint space. So if I highlight the MCQs, periarticular osteopenia, stage 2, decrease in joint space, stage 3, and the fourth stage is what you call advanced arthritis. Fourth stage is what we call advanced arthritis or the stage of complication. Here we see a big complication in the tuberculosis of hip joint, and that is known as wandering acetabulum. That means change in the position of acetabulum. These are the questions that you must remember from tuberculosis of hip. Similarly, you will have questions from tuberculosis of the spine that you must remember. Similarly, there are important MCQs, 1 or 2 liners in tuberculosis of knee also, right? So you must recall them, you must remember them, you must revise them every time you go through the infection part, right? So this is one of the most important questions. Now second, there is another topic which is known as Tom Smith arthritis. I hope you remember that. What is Tom Smith arthritis? Tom Smith arthritis, it is septic arthritis of infants of the hip joint, right? If they ask you that, what is the commonest site for Tom Smith arthritis? The septic arthritis of hip in infants, means less than 1 year of age, then it is head of femur, right? Tom Smith arthritis, most commonest site, head of femur, but tuberculosis, acetabulum. Okay, don't forget that. Identify the condition. So what he is wearing, what the child is wearing, can you recall this? Do you remember this? What the child is wearing, this one, is what you call, it is what you call the Pavlik. This is what you call the Pavlik harness. And why do we use Pavlik harness? Where do we use Pavlik harness? It is used in the condition of CDH. Now you know that there are two different kind of appliances which can be used for CDH. What are those? One is Pavlik harness and other is von Rosen splint. Now I have often seen the students getting confused between, sir, which one is von Rosen and which one is Pavlik harness, right? Student keep on getting confused and they often message, sir, splint or harness. So what is a harness? What is the basic meaning of a harness? Harness means any kind of band which is used to control basically the horse or any other animal to, you know, so that the owner can control him. Something like this. These are harnesses. This is harnesses. The picture showing different kind of animals using the harnesses. See this, another animal getting, you know, tied by a harness. So these are what you call harnesses. So when you tie the child like this is a harness, okay? And the splint would be which is malleable. Some sort of malleability is there, right? So if you talk of von Rosen splint, the splint is like this. The splint is like this, attached. I'll show you splint. Just give me a moment. I'll show you the splint also. So von Rosen splint is basically the splintage is when you go for splinting. Okay. So these are two appliances used for so this one is what you call a splint. Okay, so this one is von Rosen splint, right? Now this splint, why do we call it a splint? Because it is malleable. See, this band can be molded as you want. So these are the ends of the splints which can be molded. So that is what we call a splint, splintages, okay, to give support. So that is von Rosen splint. So the earlier one, this is Pavlik harness. Don't forget that now. So that is Pavlik harness, right? And this one is von Rosen splint. Both are used for which condition? These are used for DDH or the CDH, congenital dislocation of the hip, or the DDH, developmental dysplasia of the hip, right? For this, if you talk of the a CTEV, what is the splintage that we use for CTEV? The splintages are used here is known as Dennis Brown splint. The splint used in the cases of CTEV, which is Dennis Brown splint, right? Now next one, a patient had trauma and was applied a cast. Okay, on removal the cast, the doctor pressed the fracture site and described as moldable or soft. That means minimally tender. True among the following is, this is patellar cast with soft callus form. This is patellar cast with hard callus form. This is with bone remodeling and with hematoma. Basically, by the means of this question, the examiner is trying to ask you the stage of the fracture healing. Okay, so what are the stages of fracture healing that we must know? So when we talk of stages of fracture healing, what are the different stages of fracture healing? So different stages of fracture healing are, the first stage is what you call the stage of hematoma, immediate after injury, within few minutes. Second is the stage of inflammation, which comes after inflammation and granulation. So a stage of inflammation and granulation. Stage number 3 is when the soft callus starts forming, right? So stage number 3 is the stage of soft callus. It is the stage of soft callus. Number 4, it is the stage of hard callus. Soft callus, hard callus means what kind of bone is here? Here we have got woven bone, that is a soft bone. Okay. Number 4, hard callus, what kind of bone is that? Anatomically, it is lamellar bone, right? Histologically, basically. And number 5 is when the bone is trying to remodel. That means it is trying to get back into its original shape, original architecture, right? So if somebody asks you what is the first stage of fracture healing, so we know that the first stage of fracture healing will be hematoma. But if somebody asks you that what is the first stage of clinical fracture healing. What is the meaning of clinical fracture healing? It means that you are not able to move the fracture fragment anymore, right? Abnormal mobility at the fracture site cannot be elicited. That is another MCQ. That what is the first sign which tells you, or which is the most pathognomic sign of a fracture, which tells you that there is a fracture. So most pathognomic sign of a fracture is abnormal mobility at the fracture site, right? Abnormal mobility at fracture site. So when you are not able to elicit this, then you know that there is a soft callus which is already formed. In which stage you see the soft callus? Soft callus is seen in the stage of woven bone, right? That's in the woven bone. So where do we take now? The cast, this is a cast. Why do we call it a patellar cast? Because you see this going till patella. So that's why it is a patellar cast, right? That is PTB, patellar tendon bearing cast. Now, so patellar cast with soft callus, hard callus, remodeling. Remodeling, if it has already occurred, that means bone is healed. What is the need? If it is a hard callus, no need, right? You can free the patient. Hematoma is the very first stage. So it is a soft callus which is formed. Which stage? It is a third stage of fracture healing, right? So you have given the plaster so that there is some more time in which you have to give more time in which the soft callus converts into a hard callus, strong bone, right? Number 4, all are true except, okay? So we can see that just under the nail, say there is some sort of infection going on, right? This infection is what you call, the infection just under the nail bed is what you call paronychia, which can be acute paronychia or a chronic paronychia, right? If the infection involves this part, the pulp area, then this infection is known as phelon, right? That is infection is known as phelon. So most common infection obviously of the finger is a paronychia or the phelon. Both are okay, both are common. So most common infection is okay, whether it is phelon infection or whether it is paronychia, it is okay. Can progress into osteomyelitis? Yes. Paronychia as well as phelon both can involve the bone. Where is the bone? The bone means phalanx. Where is the phalanx? Here is the phalanx, right? Here is the phalanx, and then you have got the middle phalanx, right? And then we have got the distal phalanx, and then we have got the metacarpal, like that. Okay, so this infection can get introduced into the bone. This infection phelon can get into the bone. So that is right. So infection of the finger, osteomyelitis, treatment includes IND. Treatment includes IND, yes. For pulp, for this what you call the phelon as well as the paronychia, you'll have to drain it, and a part of nail is removed as a part of treatment option. You don't say that we have to remove it. We don't have to remove it as such, but yes, you know, this is a bit of question. This is a kind of question which is bit of kind of can be controversial. You can say, or you can simply say that language is not proper. So most common infection of the finger, when you talk about out of these phelon and paronychia, both are okay. But yes, incidence of phelon is somewhat more than paronychia, right? So a part of nail is removed as treatment option. Sometimes yes, but not always. It can be. So most common part infection phelon, paronychia, right? Second, a nail of part, it is plus minus, not always. So you can argue on both of them that sir A or D. One, I cannot say which one is better, but yes, if they specifically say this infection shown is paronychia, more common is phelon. Okay, so you can say that one is wrong, but if it is pointing out to phelon, then we don't need to remove it. Okay, so plus minus. So you should remember the infections which are of the finger, paronychia, phelon is more common or paronychia, but incidences in different books are different. But yes, clinically what we say is phelon are more common as compared to paronychia. If they talk about paronychia, then you'll have to remove the nail as a part of treatment, otherwise no. In phelon, we don't remove it. Okay, so that is about the infection, whether paronychia or phelon. This is what you call the nail. Here is you have got the nail, and this below the nail area is what you call hyponychium. Above the nail, underneath here on the back side is what you call eponychium, and this one is your nail bed. This is the bed of the nail. So infection occurring here at the bed of the nail is what you call paronychia, and infection occurring here in this pulp space is what you call phelon. So if the question is about paronychia, yes, you will have to remove some part of the nail so that the infection comes out. If the question is about phelon, then it is not required, right? Next one. Parents brought the child with the following image of thigh. Image has protruded bone with discharge. Okay. Parents confirm there is a history of bony pain and discharge from the site prior to the protrusion. So here, although the question says that the image has protruded bone with discharge, right now if I see, I don't see any bone actually here, but let's say if a bone is coming out of here, for example, let's take it like that, and there is a discharge coming, although the picture given over here is a healed sinus, healed wound. Okay, so now what the question is telling you, the hints: patient is a child, thigh, protruded bone, discharge, right? So pain and discharge from the bone. So we must remember that. What are the important points here? So if there is a bony pain with discharge and a piece of bone is coming out, what it is pointing to? That there is a sequestrum. And then on the skin, what do you have? Along with this on the skin, we have got an opening, and what that opening is known as sinus, right? Sinus is getting infective material from the bone. That means along the sequestrum, there might be have an involucrum, and then you have got a cloaca, which is an opening in the involucrum. You must remember that. So which is pointing to what condition? Pointing towards chronic osteomyelitis. So what are the hallmarks of chronic osteomyelitis? Hallmark of chronic osteomyelitis are sequestrum. They are involucrum. What is that involucrum? Involucrum is a reactive new bone around the sequestrum. It's a reactive new bone around the sequestrum. All white will be seen. And then third is a cloaca. What is a cloaca? Cloaca is a aperture in involucrum. Cloaca is a aperture in involucrum. It is a aperture in involucrum, right? So sequestrum, involucrum, and cloaca. Sequestrum, involucrum, and cloaca. These are three hallmarks of chronic osteomyelitis, right? So 45-year-old female came to OPD with complaints of pain and fatigue, diagnosed tumor of epiphysis. Okay, if I tell you very honestly, this white doesn't seem to be a tumor. It seems like some cement has been put here, the bone cement, right? But let's take the question like that. Age 45, female, complains of pain and tumor where? At epiphysis. So if I tell you in very short, there are two tumors which occur at epiphysis. What are those? Two tumors which occur at epiphysis. What are those? One is giant cell tumor. Second is chondroblastoma. Now, how will you come to know that which tumor is GCT and which tumor is chondroblastoma? Very simple. Very simple. First, eccentric or central. So GCT usually are eccentric, can be central also, but usually eccentric, and this will be a central lesion. Okay, so looking at this lesion, let's take it as a tumor. This is eccentric, not involving the whole of the area. So started from this area, has what you can say expand. GCT, the age group is 20 to 40. That means the age group where the skeleton is mature. So I don't see any kind of epiphyseal line here. What is the age group for chondroblastoma? 10 to 25 years. That means I should be able to see some growth plate like that. Third point, what is the other name for giant cell tumor? It is osteoclastoma. That means I should be able to see a lytic lesion over here. And this is blastoma. Blastoma means a blastic lesion. So you should be able to see blastic lesion. And blastic means you should be able to see bony formation. So blastic lesion or bony formation, how it has been described in literature? This blastic lesion bone formation has been described in literature as a chicken wire calcification. Or picket fence calcification. Right? So you should be able to see multiple dots. Although this tumor, the image which has been given over here, it is not correct. It is a cemented image. But if a tumor is given to you, that is how they will present to you. Right? So GCT, epiphyseal, chondrosarcoma, that means it should include the soft tissue. The tumor should have been like this, right? So cannot be possible. Osteosarcoma, the site is metaphyseal. And what is the typical presentation of this metaphyseal tumor? Sun ray appearance like this. And Ewing sarcoma, we know that diphyseal. And if it is diphyseal, what is a typical presentation? The multiple lines like this. That is what you call onion peel appearance. So only tumor given here out of the 4 options, it is giant cell tumor. So image is not accurate. Please don't correlate this with the image. This is cement which has been put here for, most likely it was a GCT which has been curated out, and then there is a cement which has been put here, right? So tumor has been basically now treated. That is giant cell tumor. And you should remember that both the tumors here are benign aggressive. So tumors broadly we divide into 3 categories: benign, benign aggressive, or purely aggressive. So here it is benign aggressive categories, right? So this is a tumor GCT which has been already treated. It's not a tumor case, it's a treated tumor case. Now the cement has been put over here, right? That is treated GCT. This is one of the image that you can have, you can just click the snaps. If you want, I can also share, and if you just scroll up and down in my orthopedic group, the Telegram, or over the Facebook, or over the WhatsApp, or the DBMCA Premier group, right? So this image I have already shared. This is one of the image that I had made, which simplifies all your tumors in one picture only, in one image only. Okay, you can see that the GCT is over here and important points have been mentioned. Eccentric, chondroblastoma, central lesion, then 6 lesions in the metaphyseal area, 4 lesions in the diaphyseal area. That's I have done. That's how I have drawn this image. So this is available at all the social media platforms wherever I am present. So I've already shared this image. If you want me to share again, just let me know, send a message on the groups, any of the groups wherever you are, and I'll be happy to share it, right? Okay, so next one, a 30-year-old female patient presents with pain in joints of hand, with rash on the dorsum of the hand, with extensive skin duration, skin tightening. The important feature which is basically differentiating all the other conditions from the rest of the 3. Rheumatoid, see, female, majority conditions are common in females. Okay, pain in joints of the hands. Pain in joint of the hand can be a feature of rheumatoid, can be a feature of psoriatic, can be a feature of osteoarthritis, can be a feature of scleroderma, anything. Rash on the dorsum, rashes we don't see here or here or here. This is plus minus, maybe, but not in other 3. We don't see any kind of rash. So rash goes more in favor of scleroderma. So plus 1, right? And then you have got skin induration and tightening, which is not a feature of any of these 3, but a feature of scleroderma, right? Now when you talk of the other features as well of rheumatoid arthritis, you know that the DIP is not involved in rheumatoid arthritis, right? The DIP and vertebra, these are 2 exceptions which are not involved in rheumatoid arthritis. Osteoarthritis, the exceptions are MCP and the wrist, right? MCP here is the exception, the first MCP, except if I tell you the exceptions also, it is a first MCP. And when I tell you about the vertebra, it is the C1C2, which is an exception here, right? This C1C2 is the exception in rheumatoid. Okay, sorry, I have written here, it is about OA, not the the psoriatic. This one is about OA. So MCP and wrist, these are not involved in OA. Exception here is except the first MCP, right? So here the most likely answer goes in favor of scleroderma, which is taught to you, I guess, in dermatology or in as a part of medicine basically. 35-year-old patient from Bihar comes with generalized bone pain. So hint here comes from here, Bihar. What is the need of mentioning Bihar here? Because in certain parts of Bihar, you have got more fluoride content in the groundwater, right? So generalized bone pain, they are giving you the condition generalized bone pain and diagnosed to have fluorosis, right? They've already given you the diagnosis, but if not given, then you should be very vigilant to think about why the state has been given fluorosis. So fluorosis of the bone is most commonest with what? If the fluoride content comes, we have been given option as osteosclerosis, that means whitening, osteomalacia, blackening. Osteopetrosis is as such a disorder in itself. They have already given you the diagnosis. So basically they want to ask you that fluorosis X-ray will be seen as how? This is how the fluorosis X-rays are seen. All white and white and white, right? Increase in density basically. So there is increase in density. That is what you call osteosclerosis. Osteosclerosis. This kind of question can be asked to you by the name of fluoride, or can be asked directly as that what are the conditions which can produce osteosclerosis? What are different conditions? So do remember, these are the conditions I have mentioned over here which can present as white X-rays, right? One is Caffey's disease. The other name for Caffey's disease, it is congenital cortical hyperostosis. Congenital cortical hyperostosis. Osteopetrosis, what is the other name for osteopetrosis? It is marble bone disease, right? Or the other name, Albers-Schonberg disease. That is Albers-Schonberg disease. Hypervitaminosis of D, which is more common to produce white X-rays, A and D. Osteopoikilosis, the other name for which is bone islands. small pieces of bones will be seen in an already formed bone, that is bone island. AVN stands for avascular necrosis. In the sclerotic phase, when the vascularity is increased suddenly in the initial phase, it will be white. Paget's disease, right? Fluorosis, the topic we are discussing. Myelosclerosis, for some reason the marrow area is white, so all X-ray will be white. Metastasis, which kind of metastasis? The blastic metastasis. Purely blastic metastasis are seen in which conditions? Prostate malignancies, right? Carcinoids. Third, medulloblastomas. So all the purely blastic tumors. Okay. Renal osteodystrophy produces what kind of picture? This is what you call Rugger Jersey spine. That is what you call Rugger Jersey spine. Okay. What is that Rugger Jersey spine? When you see the vertebra, it will be white here and white here. Central part will be black. Okay. And then idiopathic, when you don't have a reason but you find this increase in sclerosis. Right. So these are the causes of increase in bone density. That means osteosclerosis. These are the reason for osteosclerosis. Okay. Right. Next one is a 15-year-old boy playing football has an injury to the leg but now complains of deep bone pain and high-grade fever. 15 years old boy was playing and then suddenly started having pain. X-ray was taken. What is the diagnosis? Now see this. This elevation over here. This elevation over here is suggestive of what? Elevation over here. This elevation of the periosteum is what you call Codman's triangle. That is what you call Codman's triangle. So we often, remain in a dilemma that Codman's is always seen in the osteosarcomas. So can be osteosarcoma, can be Ewing sarcoma. But the point is, he is a 15-year-old boy. What is a more common tumor at this particular age? What is a more common tumor at this particular age? That is Ewing sarcoma. But yes, Ewing sarcoma should come to you not as the elevation, but as like this. Like this. So if I keep the possibility of this, I only see this Codman's triangle, it goes more in favor of osteosarcoma. Right? It goes more in favor of osteosarcoma. But point is, osteosarcoma is again a metaphyseal tumor. And here the bone has not been shown to you completely. So if I go with the feature, it goes in favor of osteosarcoma. If the tumor would have been shown like this, multiple lines around the lesion, then it would have been Ewing sarcoma. Where? At diaphysis. So Ewing sarcoma will be seen around the diaphysis. Right? And already I have told you that please go through that image. In that one single image, I have tried to compile all the important points of all the tumors in whatsoever way they are asked in your exams. Right? So these are the questions I guess the students have provided to us and we have been able to compile them. Right? So if you ever want to connect with me, you can connect with me on this mail ID given. You can connect with me on the Telegram. You can connect with me on the WhatsApp number I am giving over here. So, right, so that is all we have in the recalls from the FMGs. And if anything else is required from DBMCI, from orthopedic point of view, just connect with me anytime you want, right? So don't go to the exams with mugged up things. Go in your exams with concepts. If the concepts are clear, believe me, nothing will be wrong and you'll be able to crack majority of the questions. Okay, so study conceptually, study in a disciplined way, in a sequential way, and get the maximum output of the labor you are putting in to learn all the 19 subjects, right? So guys, thank you so much and do best in your upcoming January examination. Date has already been announced. The December session has already been announced. Do the best and definitely we are waiting for you in the studios, and then we'll definitely work hard to grab a PGME seat subsequently, right? So best wishes guys. Thank you so much for patient listening.